You should spend less time pretending to be brilliant and more time learning your place. Those are the words of my boss. My name is Edrin Halevar, and before this story unfolds, let me invite you into it. If stories about truth, patience, and quiet victory speak to you, press the buttons below this screen. Let your thoughts live in the comments, and walk with me by subscribing. Some journeys should not be taken alone. I worked at an organization people admired from the outside. Tall glass walls, clean floors, and sharp suits gave the image of success. Inside, fear lived quietly. The man in charge of my department was Mr. Corvin Drelo, head of the Strategic Growth and Innovation Unit. He carried authority well, but confidence escaped him. Corvin smiled often, yet his eyes shifted when others spoke. He praised ideas that sounded safe and small. When someone spoke boldly, his shoulders stiffened. I noticed this early, but I stayed silent. I believed respect could soften hard places. I was young, but not careless. I prayed before meetings. I listened more than I spoke. My Bible stayed in my bag, not on my desk, but its words shaped my thoughts. I believed God placed me there for a reason, even if I did not see it yet. Corvin ruled through control. He approved only what made him shine. Many people stopped trying. Dreams shrank. Innovation slowed. I felt a stirring inside me that would not rest. That was the season before the idea came. That was the calm before everything changed. The Strategic Growth and Innovation Unit sounded powerful. It was meant to design the future of the organization. On paper, we were builders of growth. In truth, we became keepers of silence. Our meetings followed the same pattern. Corvin spoke first and longest. Others nodded. Questions were rare. Creativity felt risky. I learned quickly that the room rewarded agreement, not courage. Still, I worked with care. I studied trends late at night. I examined gaps others ignored. Numbers spoke to me clearly. Patterns formed quietly in my mind while the office slept. I noticed how our logistics system leaked money across borders. Delays, poor routing, and human error cost millions each year. The problem was big, but the solution was clear. Technology could lead us where fear would not. As weeks passed, the idea grew stronger. It became a global smart logistics expansion plan, powered by predictive systems and smarter supply routes. It was not loud, but it was powerful. If done right, it could bring $200 million in new revenue. I prayed over every page. I asked God to keep pride far from me. I asked for wisdom, not applause. When the proposal felt complete, peace followed. I printed the document with steady hands. I believed good work would speak for itself. I believed leaders wanted growth. I believed honesty would be enough. I was wrong about one thing. I did not know fear could be so threatened by light. I was not the loudest person in the room. I never tried to be. My strength came from preparation and prayer. Before presenting anything, I knelt beside my bed and asked God to guide my words. The morning of the meeting felt different. My heart was calm, but my body felt alert. I dressed simply and carried my proposal carefully, as if it could break. I believed responsibility deserved respect. When my turn came, I stood slowly. I explained the problem clearly. I showed the losses without blame. I presented the solution step by step. Charts appeared. Numbers aligned. The room grew quiet. I spoke with confidence, not pride. I did not attack old systems. I offered improvement. Heads nodded gently. One colleague, Janelle Price, leaned forward with interest. Then I noticed Corvin. His fingers tightened around his pen. His smile faded. His eyes avoided the screen. He did not ask questions about the plan. He asked questions about me. How long have you been here? Who helped you with this? Do you think you understand scale? The room shifted. I answered respectfully. I kept my voice steady. I thanked him for the opportunity. When I sat down, silence filled the space. No applause followed. No encouragement came. Only the sound of fear adjusting its mask. By the end of the week, my proposal had traveled farther than I expected. Emails moved quietly. Conversations paused when I entered rooms. Something unseen had begun. The idea itself was strong. It reduced waste, increased speed. It opened new markets. Executives outside our department showed interest. That was when Corvin changed. He stopped greeting me. He canceled follow-up meetings. He removed my proposal from the shared agenda without explanation. Then the comments started. I was called overconfident in private conversations. My faith was mocked subtly. My loyalty was questioned. None of it was written down. Everything was carefully spoken. I felt the sting, but I did not strike back. I remembered the verse that says the battle belongs to the Lord. I chose to guard my heart. At night, I prayed for Corvin. That was the hardest part. I asked God to heal what fear had broken in him. I asked for justice without harm. The idea refused to die. It waited. It breathed. It remained true. I did not know then that resistance was proof of value. I only knew obedience mattered more than approval. Weeks stretched into one another, and still nothing changed. The proposal remained buried beneath polite excuses and endless delays. Corvin moved on as though it had never crossed his desk, as though the hours of thought and preparation no longer mattered. The silence was louder than any rejection. Disappointment settled in, but did not take root as defeat. Each morning, I arrived early and worked with care. I paid attention to details others overlooked. I kept my tone respectful and my attitude steady, even when Corvin avoided eye contact or ended conversations quickly. I refused to let neglect turn into resentment. A few colleagues pulled me aside with quiet warnings. Others kept their distance, unsure of where loyalty should land. Junel encouraged patience and reminded me that seasons change. I heard him, but my deepest strength came from prayer. I asked God for endurance more than answers. One afternoon, I overheard my name spoken behind a half-closed door. Corvin questioned my motives to senior managers, framing conviction as defiance and vision as overreach. My hand shook, but I held myself together. I chose restraint over reaction. I documented every interaction carefully. I continued refining the proposal in silence, improving clarity and strengthening its foundation. I trusted that truth, like light, eventually finds an opening. Applause never came during that season, but something stronger than applause was forming, and I remained standing. After the presentation, Corvin's behavior shifted in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. His voice lost warmth. His patience shortened. His eyes followed me more closely, as though guarding something he feared might be taken. At first, I questioned my perception. Then patterns formed. Meetings moved forward without my name on the list. Emails went unanswered. When I spoke, he cut me off. When I stayed quiet, he accused me of withholding information. Nothing I did seemed to be the right response. One afternoon, he summoned me to his office. The door closed gently, but the air felt heavy. He leaned back and spoke carefully, saying my ideas could confuse people and that I should not want that responsibility. His tone was calm, but his message was clear. I understood then that the proposal had become a threat, not because it lacked merit, but because it carried weight. He advised me to slow down, to focus only on assigned tasks. He reminded me who controlled approval and who delayed it. I left the office without protest. My chest tightened, but my thoughts remained steady. I paused in the hallway and prayed, asking God to guard my heart against bitterness. That night, I reviewed the proposal again. The facts were unchanged. The numbers remained honest. The value was still clear. That was when I understood. Fear does not attack weakness. It attacks potential. The weeks that followed felt disorienting, like moving through thick fog. Meetings appeared on calendars without my name. Decisions were announced without explanation. Shared folders were updated, and my proposal quietly vanished from them. When I asked questions respectfully, Corvin smiled and said the timing was not right. When I followed up, he said leadership was unavailable. His responses sounded complete, but led nowhere. I noticed a shift around me. Conversations paused when I entered rooms. Chairs scraped softly as people created distance. Silence settled in, heavier than confrontation ever could be. Janelle spoke to me again, carefully choosing his words. He said Corvin felt exposed. He warned me to tread lightly. I thanked him, but I refused to let fear dictate my conduct. I continued working with excellence. I arrived early and stayed late. I treated everyone with respect, including Corvin. At home, I prayed for direction, asking whether to press forward or wait. What came was not instruction, but peace, and I learned to trust it. One day, I noticed my proposal removed from the agenda board. No explanation, no warning, simply erased. My hands trembled, but my resolve held. I documented what I saw. I saved records. I refined details. Closed doors do not mean closed futures. Sometimes they reveal someone's fear of what is coming. The first public attack came during a team meeting. Corvin cleared his throat and spoke casually. "Some people here confuse ambition with wisdom," he said, glancing in my direction. "Not every idea deserves attention." The room went still. He questioned my experience. He joked about my age. He suggested I misunderstood scale and responsibility. No names were spoken, but everyone understood. My face felt warm. My heart beat faster. I wanted to defend myself. Words formed quickly in my mind. I chose silence. That choice cost me comfort, but it saved my spirit. I remembered that Jesus stayed quiet before false words. I followed that example. After the meeting, a few people avoided eye contact. One person whispered encouragement. Janelle squeezed my shoulder. Corvin continued. He reassigned my duties. He reduced my visibility. He smiled as if nothing had happened. That night, I cried alone. I did not complain to God. I asked him to help me remain clean inside. The blow hurt, but did not break me. Corvin's attacks became quieter and more dangerous. He spoke behind doors. He shaped opinions slowly. I heard that he questioned my loyalty. He suggested I wanted attention. He hinted that my faith made me unreliable. Nothing was written. Everything was whispered. I learned how lies travel faster than truth when fear carries them. I felt misunderstood, but I stayed steady. I greeted Corvin kindly. I responded respectfully. I did not expose him. I did not fight back. At home, I prayed harder. I asked God to defend what I refused to destroy. I asked for strength to endure. Some nights felt long. Doubt knocked often. Peace answered softly. I reminded myself that character is proven when no one claps. I believe God saw every quiet choice. Knives can cut deep, but they cannot kill what God protects. By then, the pressure was heavy. The temptation to retaliate felt strong. I knew what evidence I had. I knew who to contact. I chose faith instead of force. Each morning, I prayed before work. I asked God to guide my steps and guard my mouth. I asked him to bless Corvin even when it hurt. I refined my proposal privately. I prepared for a future I could not see. I learned patience. I learned restraint. I learned that faith is not passive. It is disciplined trust. Fire reveals truth, and mine was still standing. The lies did not arrive loudly. They came dressed in clean language and polite greetings. Corvin wrote emails that sounded professional and calm, but each one bent the truth slightly. He copied senior managers and praised teamwork while quietly questioning my judgment. He spoke of concerns and alignment issues. He hinted that my proposal needed more maturity. Nothing he wrote could be challenged easily. Everything sounded reasonable. I saw the emails later through quiet channels. Each line felt sharp, not because it was cruel, but because it was careful. Lies written politely still injured deeply. I felt anger rise, but I refused to respond the same way. I did not write counter emails. I did not defend myself in long messages. I chose restraint. At night, I prayed for wisdom. I asked God how to walk through falsehood without becoming false myself. I learned that silence can be louder than accusation. Corvin's emails traveled far. My name moved through rooms I never entered. Opinions formed without my presence. Still, I stayed steady. Truth does not need decoration, but lies often do. Silence can be heavy when it is chosen, not forced. That was the season I entered. Friends grew distant. Conversations felt careful. I felt alone, even in crowded rooms. The lies had done their work. I wanted to explain myself. I wanted to clear my name. I wanted to shout the truth. I did none of those things. I chose silence because I believed God was my defender. I believed that fighting dirty would stain what I was trying to protect. Each day required discipline. I controlled my tongue. I guarded my thoughts. I resisted bitterness. Loneliness tested me. Faith anchored me. I reminded myself that character is not built when people clap. but when no one sees. I continued to work with excellence. I treated Corvin with respect. The weight was heavy, but I carried it cleanly. Silence hurt, but it preserved my heart. Advice came from unexpected places. Some people urged me to expose Corvin. They said I had enough evidence. They said truth needed help. They were not wrong, but they were not right for me. I prayed deeply before deciding. I searched my heart. I asked God whether winning was more important than integrity. The answer was clear. I chose not to strike back. That decision cost me sleep. It cost me comfort. It cost me reputation for a season, but it kept my soul whole. I understood then that not every battle is meant to be fought publicly. Some are meant to be surrendered. Integrity is quiet courage, and I chose it. The announcement came through official channels on a quiet afternoon. It did not arrive with warning or emotion. It was brief, clean, and final. My proposal was labeled postponed indefinitely. There was no timeline attached. There was no explanation offered. There was no room for appeal. The document disappeared into systems and schedules, filed under future considerations that rarely return. What had taken months of careful thought was buried beneath routine and convenience. Corvin had succeeded, at least for the moment, in stopping what he feared. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen longer than necessary. Disappointment washed over me slowly, not like a wave, but like rain that sinks into clothing. I felt the weight of effort that seemed wasted. I felt the quiet sadness of being unheard. I allowed myself to grieve, but only in private. I did not perform my pain. I did not seek sympathy. I let the moment pass through me honestly. Then I stood up again. I did not argue with leadership. I did not complain to colleagues. I did not send defensive messages. I accepted the delay without surrendering hope. I reminded myself that delay is not denial. I remembered that God's timing does not panic when mine feels strained. I chose patience over protest. The paper was buried deep, but my faith was not, and neither was my purpose. Peace came to me in a way I did not expect. It did not arrive because anything around me changed. It came because something inside me settled. I trusted that God saw everything I could not fix. He saw the buried proposal. He saw the unfairness. He saw the restraint I practiced when speaking would have been easier. That trust steadied me. I returned to the proposal quietly, without announcement or audience. I reviewed every page with fresh eyes. I refined weak areas. I strengthened projections. I improved clarity where it could be misunderstood. I prepared it carefully for a future moment I could not yet see. No one noticed the work. No one praised the effort. No one asked for updates. God did. I worked as if opportunity still mattered because I believed it did. I refused to let discouragement make me careless. I refused to let silence make me bitter. Each small improvement felt like obedience. Each quiet decision felt like faith in action. I learned that unseen work is not wasted work. What is done with integrity is stored safely, even when hidden. The God who sees does not forget details. He does not overlook patience. He does not abandon what he begins. And he was not done. I did not know it then, but someone had started watching. While my proposal sat buried, eyes higher than Corvin's had begun to notice the stillness in our department. Mrs. Maylis Thornwick, the chief executive officer, was known for her calm strength. She spoke little, but she observed deeply. Results mattered to her. So did honesty. Our department had shown no growth for months. Numbers stalled. Ideas slowed. That silence spoke louder than reports. One afternoon, a request arrived asking for updates on innovation pipelines. Corvin looked uneasy. He smiled too much. He promised progress that did not exist. I stayed quiet and continued my work. I refined projections. I updated models. I prepared as if opportunity could arrive any moment. That evening, peace filled my heart without reason. I sensed movement, though nothing visible had changed. God often works above the noise, and someone was finally listening. The questions came suddenly. Mrs. Thornwick asked for detailed timelines. She requested proposal histories. She wanted to know why no major ideas had reached her desk from SGIU. Corvin struggled to answer. His explanations tangled. His confidence cracked. He called emergency meetings. He searched for files. He asked questions he once ignored. I was invited into a meeting I had not attended in months. Corvin avoided my eyes. My proposal sat quietly on the table. Mrs. Thornwick asked me to explain my work. I spoke calmly. I shared facts, not feelings. I showed value, not frustration. I answered honestly. The room felt different. Truth has weight. Corvin interrupted once, but she raised her hand. Silence followed. I realized then that God does not rush justice. He reveals it. More meetings followed after the first round of questions. They were not loud meetings. They were quiet, serious gatherings where every word carried weight. Each time, new questions surfaced. Each time, Corvin's answers shifted slightly. At first, the changes were small. A date moved forward. A decision was blamed on timing. An email was explained away. Then the gaps became clearer. Statements no longer matched records. Timelines bent under pressure. Trust weakened slowly, like a rope fraying strand by strand. Mrs. Thornwick listened more than she spoke. She did not rush anyone. She studied faces, pauses, and reactions. When Corvin spoke, she watched his hands. When others spoke, she watched his eyes. Her attention never wandered. I remained steady throughout it all. I did not accuse him. I did not defend myself aggressively. I resisted the urge to explain too much. I answered when asked, clearly and calmly. When questions were not directed at me, I stayed silent. Inside, I prayed for strength. I asked God to help me speak truth without bitterness. I reminded myself that I did not need to fight for my name. Fear cannot hide forever. Under steady light, it exposes itself. By the end of those meetings, Corvin's fear was no longer a secret. It showed in his voice, his posture, and his pauses. Nothing dramatic happened yet, but something important had changed. The mask had cracked, and everyone could see it. One morning, I received a message I had waited for quietly. My proposal had been officially reopened. There were no explanations attached. There were no apologies. It was simply back on the table. Documents resurfaced from old folders. Printed pages returned to conference rooms. Numbers were reviewed carefully. Charts were studied again. Experts from outside the department were consulted to confirm the data. I watched closely, but I did not interfere. I answered questions when asked. I clarified details when needed. I stayed focused on accuracy. The idea stood firm under examination. The numbers held. The logic remained sound. As the review continued, I felt gratitude rise inside me. It was not pride. It was relief mixed with thankfulness. I thanked God quietly for keeping the work clean and true. The plan began moving forward without resistance. Approvals traveled faster now. Meetings ended with clear decisions. Progress felt natural instead of forced. What was buried had risen. Not because I fought, but because truth lasts. I learned something in that season. Delay does not cancel purpose. Silence does not erase value. A good idea may wait, but it does not rot. What was delayed was not denied. It was simply preserved for the right time. Mrs. Thornwick asked for one final explanation before decisions were finalized. She said she wanted the full story, told plainly and completely. There was no anger in her voice, only clarity. We met in her office. The room was quiet and well lit. I sat across from her and took a slow breath. I prayed silently before speaking. I shared the facts from the beginning. I explained how the idea was formed. I described the process calmly. I spoke about delays without accusation. I did not attack Corvin's character. I honored his position, even while explaining the truth. I chose my words carefully. I avoided emotion. I focused on what could be proven. I trusted that honesty was enough. Mrs. Thornwick listened without interruption. She did not take notes. She did not react. Her silence was steady and intentional. When I finished speaking, the room remained still. No questions followed immediately. The air felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. Truth had spoken clearly, and it needed no defense. I realized then that truth does not rush. It waits patiently until it is heard. I left the office with peace, not certainty. Whatever happened next was no longer in my hands. I had spoken with clean words. That was enough. The boardroom felt colder than usual that morning. Long glass walls reflected serious faces, and every seat was filled. I had never been invited to such a meeting before. I walked in quietly and took my place near the end of the table. Mrs. Maylis Thornwick sat at the head. Her posture was calm, but her presence commanded attention. Corvin sat 2 seats away from her. His hands rested flat on the table, but his jaw was tight. The meeting began with numbers. Charts appeared on the screen. Projections followed. Then my proposal was displayed in full view. No edits. No filters. Just truth. Mrs. Thornwick asked Corvin to explain why the proposal had stalled for months. He spoke carefully at first. His voice sounded steady, but his reasons did not align. Dates were questioned. Emails were reviewed. Silence grew heavy. Then she turned to me. I explained the idea from beginning to end. I spoke slowly. I avoided emotion. I did not accuse Corvin. I focused on value, growth, and clarity. When I finished, no one spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full of understanding. Mrs. Thornwick closed the file gently. She thanked me for my discipline and patience. She said integrity was rare and valuable. I looked at Corvin briefly. His eyes were lowered. That day, the truth did not shout. It simply stood. The approval came faster than I expected. Within days, the proposal moved into implementation. Teams were assembled. Budgets were released. Systems were built. The global smart logistics expansion plan became official. I was invited into rooms I had never entered before. My voice was requested. My input was respected. Each step forward felt unreal, yet peaceful. Corvin was quiet. He no longer blocked meetings. He no longer questioned my presence. The fear that once drove him had nowhere left to hide. Mrs. Thornwick addressed the department openly. She spoke about transparency, growth, and trust. She reminded everyone that leadership must protect ideas, not suffocate them. I worked harder than ever. I arrived early. I stayed late. I prayed often. I wanted success without pride. The system launched in phases. Routes improved. Delays dropped. New markets opened. Efficiency climbed. Light does not fight darkness. It replaces it. I thank God every night. I knew this was not my doing alone. I had been preserved for this moment. Fear had ruled for a season, but light had taken over. 6 months later, the numbers finally told the story that patience had been holding back. Reports arrived steadily, and each one carried the same message. Revenue climbed in clear stages. Losses dropped sharply across regions. Global partners expanded their contracts with confidence. When the final report was presented, the figure stood firm at $200 million. The room responded with controlled excitement. This was not reckless celebration, but satisfied recognition. Executives allowed themselves open smiles. Analysts nodded as they reviewed the data again, finding no error. Growth had come honestly. Mrs. Thornwick stood and addressed everyone. Her voice was calm, but proud. She spoke about teamwork and careful execution. She emphasized discipline, patience, and integrity as the foundation of the success. Then she mentioned my name. Applause followed immediately. It filled the room and echoed longer than expected. I acknowledged it politely, but inside, something quieter happened. My heart felt full, not lifted. The moment did not inflate me. I remembered the closed doors that once blocked me. I remembered the whispers that questioned my character. I remembered the prayers spoken in silence. Corvin sat quietly at the table. He clapped slowly, without resistance. His face did not show anger. It showed regret. Success had spoken louder than fear ever could. That night, I knelt and thanked God. I thanked him for keeping my hands clean when retaliation was possible. I thanked him for defending what I refused to fight for myself. $200 million changed the organization. Integrity changed me. The promotion announcement came without warning. There was no build-up and no rumor. Mrs. Thornwick asked me to come to her office, and I went quietly. She spoke with clarity and kindness. She said leadership required courage to stand firm, restraint to remain clean, and vision to see beyond fear. She told me I had shown all three, even when it cost me comfort. She informed me that I was being promoted above Corvin. The decision was not loud. It was firm and final. Corvin was reassigned to a non-leadership role in another division. There was no public shame. There was no celebration of his fall. There was accountability, delivered with dignity. Later, we met briefly. At first, he avoided my eyes. Then his shoulders relaxed, and his voice softened. He admitted his fear. He admitted that insecurity had guided his actions. He acknowledged his mistakes without excuses. I listened carefully. I did not interrupt. I did not remind him of the pain. When he finished, I forgave him. Leadership is not about position. It is about posture. I stepped into my new role with humility. I invited voices that had been silent. I encouraged ideas without fear. I protected creativity instead of controlling it. The department began to change. So did its spirit. Looking back now, I understand why the victory waited. If it had come earlier, it might have damaged me more than delay ever did. Waiting refined my character. Silence strengthened my faith. I learned that God does not rush promotion. He prepares the person before releasing the position. He shapes the heart before changing the title. I lead with gratitude now. I pray before decisions, not after mistakes. I listen deeply to others, especially quiet voices. I remember where I came from and what it cost to stand clean. This story is not about money or titles. It is about integrity under pressure. If you're watching this while feeling ignored, attacked, or delayed, hold on. Do not fight dirty. Do not lose your heart trying to win quickly. God sees everything that is hidden. He records every quiet choice. And when He lifts you, no fear, no lie, and no insecurity can pull you back down.